See here. Hold it. Hello, Karma Dog team. We have Jacqueline Geiger here, guest speaking for today. Absolutely amazing. She's going to tease about the topic today is going to be choosing the right dog for your family. And she's going to put in some amazing key points of why and how to choose a dog, not only for their breeding, but also if they are a right impact for the family's growth, the whole pack's growth as well, along with supporting the dog's development, choose dog based, not on looks or portrayal of the media, and so forth. And we're going to continue to dive more deep into it with Jacqueline here. So thank you so much, Jacqueline, for being here with us today. And quick bit, we do have a fun fact dog barking in the background. He's so excited about it. It is Jacqueline's favorite pup. So if you hear him barking every now and then, that's where that level is coming from. So Jacqueline, welcome to Karma Dog podcast.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be talking about this. I think that when you're wanting to get a dog, choosing a breed that's really going to work for your family is so important. It's really important, from that first step of which puppy or which adult dog am I going to adopt, to get get started on the right foot, and it can really make the whole journey that much easier.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. You could not have said it best. Like, my heart was so filled when you said that, for sure. And guys, we also tried to do a podcast last Friday. It's Saturday. So this is March 21st. We'll probably be uploading this, if not today, tomorrow. But we tried to do a podcast last Friday, and the weather was quite interesting in Jacqueline's area. It was Arkansas snowing, but the reception was unique. So we're doing another brilliant podcast. So that way, technical difficulties can be out of the box here. It's not even a variable to be established. And we're just going to continue to dive deep into this. We're going to go right head into it. So Jacqueline, I understand with one of your first questions is to have a clear intention about the role of, you hope, or pet parents in general, us in general, even us as trainers, right, of picking the right dog for us, for what your new dog will feel. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I think that we all know that, families are incredibly diverse. There's as many or more different kinds of families as there are dogs. And so it's really important as a first step. And you're like, I know I want a dog, to sort of try and set an intention to, connect with yourself and connect with the rest of your family and think, what sort of role do I imagine this dog filling in my life? Maybe you've got some young kids and you're really looking for a dog who's just going to be an all-time family dog, be the kid's best friend growing up, be part of the family. Or maybe you are alone and you love running and you're just looking for someone who's going to be your running buddy, give you that extra motivation to get up and get going every day. Maybe you're older, maybe you're an older couple, and you're looking for someone who's going to bring, light and joy and companionship in your golden years. And maybe you have some challenges and you're looking for a dog who can be a support animal, either an emotional support animal or an actual service dog, and you're looking for that extra role for the dog to fill in your life. So it's really important that that's the first step. Once you want a dog, is to connect with the intention of what role do I want this dog to fill in my life. And different breeds were bred for different purposes. So once you've sort of connected with the role you want your dog to fill, and it's important to research the breed's histories, because it's really going to be coming out in their genetics, and it's really going to influence their personalities and their inclinations for what they want to be doing on a day-to-day basis. For example, herding breeds tend to be pretty high energy. They're really focused and they have to have a job. So if you're going to adopt any sort of herding breed, German Shepherd, Heeler, anything like that, you really need a breed, or you need to be prepared to give that dog a job. Because if we get a shepherd and we don't give them a job, then they pick a job on their own. And shepherds, they can pick jobs like barking or, herding people around the house, or digging or chewing. And so sort of like that. And so it's not only shepherds, that were bred to fulfill certain purposes, there's lots of other kinds of dogs. Terriers are one that can be kind of misleading. It's really easy to look at terriers and think, oh my gosh, it's so cute and fluffy, I just want to bring it home and cuddle it. But terriers were actually bred as hunting dogs, so a lot of them were used as ratting dogs, and so they were bred to be really independent, and pretty aggressive with a high prey drive, to be out in a barn or a field hunting rats and mice, you know, and so they're kind of harder to train, and they're not necessarily such a good fit if you have kids, versus like, a Labrador retriever. Labradors were originally bred to be lifeguard dogs, and then from there, more recently, they were bred to be hunting dogs. And so they have a really high desire to just hang out with humans, and they make really good family dogs. And so it's really, really important to look into the breed's history before you pick what kind of dog you want.
Oh, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And that helps people so much to get like a grasp of like a better understanding and an awareness, right? You like helping, because what are we all wanting, right? Like more education of like knowing how we can contribute to things, like, whether it's just our dogs or our career or personal life, anything of that matter. And that kind of went into our next question that I'm so interested of you talking about. I'm so excited for you to share, which we touch bases of you explaining how knowing the breed's history. So how different dogs and breeds have different jobs. And especially I love the pinpoint that you came out with the terriers, because that is so true. Like from movies, oh my gosh, like photography of like having like the little terriers and the, purses and pouches and things like that, which is cool, like cool for a carrier, but like, why are you having that breed around? And when people know, like, oh my goodness, like this makes so much sense of why this terrier is doing research in the house and finding this job and tearing up this thing and trying to like nip and bark at the kids around the house. And it's because they're meant to, they were bred for a specific job. And not many pet parents are aware of that type of that information. So that's why they get confused. They come to us, right? They come to trainers to try to understand how to communicate better with their pets. And oh gosh, I could literally go on about this. I just love the way you shared it, because it helps so much. And it, like, by you sharing this information to not only trainers but pet parents, like it gives them a sense of ease, right? Because anytime that pet parents come to us as trainers, and I'm sure you've experienced this, they think like, they're discouraged, right? They feel guilty and they shame themselves. And it's just because they don't have the right information. No one told them this. Those people will just say, yeah, pick a dog. And if you like the dog, just bring it home. But there's so much more. There's so much responsibility. So going to the second one of, yes, the breeding history and bred for the different types of jobs, let's continue to dive deep into that.
So, yeah, so like you were saying, people don't know, there's this sort of misconception that a dog is a dog is a dog. We think of it, I think a lot of people think of it sort of like cars, it's like, yeah, there's trucks and cars, and they are different sizes, they can do different amounts of stuff, but basically a car, it just looks different. And dogs are so dramatically not like that. They have this genetic job that they want to fulfill, and so knowing what that is and not just going off looks is so important. And once you've chosen a breed, and you're like, okay, I think this is the right breed for me, I want to go running every day, and I love doing obedience, and I really have the time, I think I'm going to get a shepherd, or whatever it is, a Labrador, a Cocker Spaniel. You're going to get this dog, and you've researched its history, what kind of job it wants to do. So it's important before you even bring the puppy home to have a plan. How am I going to give this dog the space to fulfill its job in? So for a shepherd, agility or herding classes could be a really great way to give that dog an opportunity to grow, because just like we want to have a job and we want to be able to do what it is we want to do and grow and excel and build those skills, and it helps us be happier, as more fulfilled as people. Dogs need that too. And there's so many different options, for large and small dogs. Any size dog can do agility. There's lots of different levels for different ages and abilities. For smaller breeds that are interested in tunneling and hunting, like dachshunds, there's programs where they have like straw and they set up tunnels and lay scent trails through the tunnels, so the dogs go into a tunnel like they're naturally instinctively driven to, and they can scent in the tunnel, and that can be really fulfilling.
Mhm.
There's so many different options for doing that, but it's just really important once you've got your dog to have a plan. This is how I'm going to support my dog in fulfilling its drive as a dog, and getting that satisfaction of doing a good job. It's also really important to stay balanced within that, though. So dogs can become obsessive. I think probably a lot of people have met that Labrador or whatever breed that's got its tennis ball or its stick, and all it wants you to do is throw that tennis ball or stick. Doesn't want to be petted, doesn't want to hang out. It is just on that ball and stick all day long. Throw it, throw it, throw it. And so it's important to have a balance of that and have a plan for that, of like, this is going to be my dog's time, to build its passion, and develop as a person. And then this is going to be its time when it's at home, being a part of the family. And just like we sort of, can learn to leave our careers at work and then come home to our families, dogs can learn to do that too. And so having that balance and having a plan so that the puppy has that consistency, or that, that shelter dog knows this is always the way it is with these people, is we always do it like this. I go here, I'm focused, I'm doing a job, I come home, I have another set of rules at home where, maybe I'm hanging out more, lying on my bed, chewing on designated chews, whatever it is. And then I just want to touch into some things to avoid that I think are some common pitfalls that people fall into. So the first one I kind of already mentioned of not picking a dog just based on looks. That's so important, to not choose a dog just on what it looks like, to research the history. It's also important to not go off of media portrayals, because dogs are often portrayed in unrealistic ways in the media. 101 Dalmatians is a really good example of that, where in the movie, I'm sure most of you or all of you are familiar with it, the dogs are portrayed as extremely loving house pets that spend, the day snoozing away while their owners work, and then are excited to go for their walk at night, and are just great family dogs. And that is not actually the case with Dalmatians. Dalmatians were bred to be guard dogs for carriages. So they're fairly independent, they're more likely to be aggressive, they don't make good children's dogs, and they have a higher prey drive. So of course you can have a Dalmatian who is a great family dog because there's individual variation. But in general, if you have small children, a Dalmatian is not going to be a good fit for your family. And so it's really important to not just go off of media portrayals. There's also, just like everything trends in our modern world, dogs trend, different dog breeds. And getting a breed just because it's trending is a really, really poor idea, because, trends are going to last, maybe 2 or 3 years at the longest, whereas dogs are going to live, for 10 to 15 years. And so it's really important to fully take on the understanding of, am I just getting this dog so that I can have really adorable selfies like my friend is having? Or am I getting this dog because it's going to be the right fit for my family? And I'm committed to this dog for its whole life, even when it gets older, starts going gray, maybe loses some teeth, gets a little fat, It's important we don't just get dogs for trending or for looks. Another misconception that I want to address is, so we're in a little bit of a doodle craze right now, at least in my area. Seems like every third dog I work with is a doodle. And I have a lot of owners who tell me, oh, I got a doodle because they're hypoallergenic. And some doodles are hypoallergenic, but not every doodle is. And so it's really important to consider that too, and really do your research, and not just listen to, the common stories that are going around, because in the dog world, so much information comes from the internet or mouth to mouth. It's not something that people are really studying in school. And so it's really important to do your own research.
And so have you ever met a Newfie-doodle?
I've not met a Newfie-doodle, but I have met a Bernedoodle.
And what's a Bernedoodle?
A Bernese Mountain Dog poodle.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So interesting.
It's really, sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to add one more point. It's really important to be aware of size too. So the Bernedoodle that I just mentioned, when his parents bought him, they were told that he would mature to 50 pounds. When I worked with him, he was 9 months old, so not full grown yet, but he already weighed 75 pounds. So he was supposed to be a mini, but he was not a mini. And so it's really important too, when you're getting any sort of mix or any sort of designer dog, you know, like any sort of doodle, that you're sort of rolling the genetic dice. So even if the breeder says, oh, you know, he's only a quarter Bernese Mountain Dog and he's 3/4 miniature poodle, he's going to be small. You never know how those traits are going to express themselves. So you can get a dog that has almost no poodle characteristics and is basically a Bernese Mountain Dog. Or you could get a dog who's basically a poodle, but it's really important to be aware that whenever you're getting any sort of cross, you're really rolling the dice for what you're going to get, and there's a lot less predictability than if you get a purebred.
Right. I like how you said that, rolling the genetic dice, because that's so true. I mean, I can't even tell you how, oh goodness. Yeah, that's so true. And going back to the Newfie-doodle, this is actually the first time on camera that I'm pronouncing it correctly, because I did not know how to pronounce it, because I am still shocked that there is one. And I worked with this pup in September, I believe. His name was Sirius Black. And he so precious, wonderful. They did this skill of I'm sure you're aware of like how they do the like for service dog cooking, and he was a 3, so he was really mellow, which was wonderful because the child, he was a little bit nervous of like being introduced with pups, just because he's been around like other excited breeds and they would kind of nip. So working with Sirius, he was a puppy. Whenever I flew in to go, actually, they were in Seattle. They were in Washington. They only had him not oh my goodness, below 24 hours. Like it hadn't even been 24 hours yet since they just received him. And so he overall, the session turned out to be very well, and Vinny is what his name is. He really enjoyed the bonding time we constructed with that as well. But it definitely plays a huge part, because one of the concerns, which is the reason why I had all that up, is that they were looking at the size, right? And they knew Goofy, he might be pretty big. So that was one of the things, that if Sirius wasn't at the 3 threshold of being like super mellow that he was, they would have probably thought about maybe returning him back, just because he would have been a bigger breed. He was super active, and they were worried about him maybe running out of the house and knocking Benny over. So that is definitely something to look into for sure. And an amazing key point with that. But I kind of want to ask you that quick question of, that's interesting. That's the first time that I've heard of it, of not every doodle is hypoallergenic. So what determines a dog to be hypoallergenic?
So hypoallergenic basically just means that they don't shed. And even a dog that is 100% hypoallergenic is still going to be it still has the potential to cause some allergies, because obviously even if they're not shedding fur or dander, they're still shedding skin cells, and there's saliva. So even the most hypoallergenic dog is never going to be 100%. But doodles, I think it was something like only 1/3 of doodles are hypoallergenic, but I'm not 100% on that. But this is just sort of a ballpark. That they can still have some shedding, some dander shedding, or more skin shedding, or more spit, depending on what they're crossed with.
Okay, so what determines a pup or a doodle of being hypoallergenic would determine of them shedding, pretty much? even
Right.
that they could still have those tendencies of course, shedding their skin cells. Like we all do that. They cannot
Right.
stop.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay, that's a
Yeah.
wonderful piece to know, because you're
Yeah.
so when things are trending and people are told this information of like, oh yeah, all doodles are hypoallergenic, and you shouldn't get any type of allergies off of that. So that's a wonderful piece. Okay,
Right. Yeah. So it's probably going to be less, but probably more than with a regular poodle.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Well, let's
Yeah.
go deep into that third one then, girl. Having a plan to support the dog's development is inherited, correct me, inherited skills, and then in balance, not being obsessive. So that's kind of what you just went over with the
Yeah.
Labrador and the tennis ball.
Yeah. I think I got that one. I think that I was on to how to pick a dog, but I also just wanted to touch really briefly
Yeah,
on something you shared with the temperament of a dog,
okay.
and choosing that. I don't want to get super in that, but I also did just want to throw out there that if you are buying a dog from a breeder and you're able, to meet the litter, looking into that, there's things you can find online to help you determine a puppy's temperament, and that's a really good tool too, to
Mm,
be, to see them interacting with their litter mates, and
yeah.
you can sort of gauge like or gauge, is this puppy a little bit more dominant, a little bit more bossy, is this puppy just sleeping all the time? And they're oftentimes will sort of continue on that trajectory into their adult life.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful tip. Is there a specific website that you recommend for people to go to, or?
I don't have a specific website in mind. I think there's just some really general, traits to watch for, and then there's some scoring systems you can find online. But just sort of, is this a puppy that's always running up to its siblings and sort of playing with them? Is
Right.
this a puppy that when someone like goes to play with them, they like yip and run away and are scared?
Get
Um,
started a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that sort of could be like its whole own video. There's
Yeah.
like so much intricate like litter dynamics that
Mhm.
you can use to help you choose a puppy. But I think I'll go on to my final point that I had for this one, which is once you've decided what kind of dog you want, you've sort of got the breed picked out, you've got a plan for how you're going to support this dog in living with you, you've avoided some common pitfalls. The question is, where do I go to get this dog? And I am a big advocate of shelters. I think that, it's absolutely so tragic how many dogs and cats lose their lives in this country every day just because there's no one who has a place in their home for them. And so I'm a big fan of that. If you can go to a shelter and you're prepared to take on a dog who might have a little bit of extra trouble, then I think that is so great. And a lot of the time you'll get a dog that's already housebroken or someone who's already got some training, and there's a lot of dogs that they're really great family pets and just sort of down on their luck. And if you do decide to go the route of getting a young puppy, it's really important to know how to distinguish between reputable breeders and puppy mills. So for those of you who aren't familiar with puppy mills, there is abundant information online, and they live in really, really terrible conditions. And it's very important that that we all work really hard to not support puppy mills by buying puppies that come from them. Because even if you buy a puppy that comes from a puppy mill and you give that puppy a great life, your money just went towards supporting the industry, and that puppy's mom is probably living in a really tough situation. So it's really important to avoid that, and find a reputable breeder. And you'll know that it's a reputable breeder because when you say, hey, I would like to come and visit, they'll be like, yeah, no problem. When would you like to come? Whereas puppy mills are going to be, oftentimes they're being shipped across the country, so you would never see them, or maybe they're local, but they don't accept visitors. And those are all big red flags that they are hiding something. Their dogs are not living in healthy environments. So it's really important that if you want to buy a puppy from a breeder, you go and you actually meet the puppy's parents. So you can be like, this is my puppy's mom, and this is where she lives, and this is what her life is like. This is my puppy's dad. Another good question to ask the breeders is, how many litters do your dogs have in their lifetime? So a dog that is getting bred every single year, that's really going to impact her life versus a dog, you know, who's having her litter staggered. So maybe she has a litter every 2 years, which is going to give her body the time it needs to recover after each pregnancy. And also, you know, give her the space and time to be a dog and not just being a mom all the time. So I think that those are some really important points.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And that is something that definitely needs to spread more awareness. And I'm going to touch bases to where you said organizations of puppy mills. Could you elaborate more on that?
So I think I just meant, I know there are, you know, there's large puppy mills in different places in the country that do it. I don't know any specific names, but that's just sort of what I meant. It was just places that do it. Another thing to throw out there is breeders or pet stores, because most puppies you're going to find in pet stores are probably from puppy mills, because a reputable breeder is not going to just sell their puppies to a pet store. You know, they're going to want to know where their puppy's going and make sure it's getting a good home. So unless they specifically say, you know, that they're rescues, they're probably from puppy mills. And any sort of, like, if they're saying they're USDA certified puppies, then that probably means they're from a puppy mill, because if you're just a small breeder, you know, who has maybe, you know, 10 dogs, you know, you have maybe 1 litter a year, 1 litter every 6 months, you know, you're not going to need to get USDA certified because of the scale of your industry. But if you have, you know, 200 dogs, you're having 200 or 300 litters a year, those are the sorts of circumstances in which the USDA is going to get involved. So if they're saying that they're USDA certified, it probably means there's a puppy mill, and it's actually a red flag and not a sign that it's safe to proceed.
Wow. That's a lot to take in for sure, but absolutely right. And you know, whew, I don't even know where to begin with that. But like, what gets me thinking is the fact that, one, if they're being monitored of being USDA certified, that really just shows the like the industry that even provides that in the first place, of what that shares about them, right? I feel like we can do so much more to have a better, a balanced transition of how we can, well, number one, to stop puppy mills altogether. That's 100%. We definitely can agree on that.
Yeah.
But, you know, so I guess what I'm asking here, what are some things that maybe we can do to help bring this awareness of puppy mills, and also what are more things that we can continue to like put in action, right? Not just spreading the word, which I think is beautiful, but also that we can put into action to close puppy mills down.
Yeah, so there's legislation that can happen to outlaw puppy mills, or to outlaw places that are selling dogs that likely come from puppy mills. I know that that's something that's going on in Washington state right now. There's a push to get legislation to outlaw places that sell, you know, puppies, that outlaw puppy stores. I know that that happened in California, that was outlawed, at least in my own research that I've done. I think, you know, education is probably the biggest thing, like supporting that legislation, choosing where we buy from, and then also letting people know, like speaking up, like, you know, if your friend has this cute puppy, you know, be like, oh, that's so nice. Like, where did you get it from? Like, it might be hard for them to take in that they supported this industry in buying their puppy, but speaking up can help save other puppies. And also, if you have a friend that's like, oh, I'm interested in getting a puppy, you know, really, really being strong and being like, yeah, like, I'm really excited you're getting a puppy. Make sure you don't get one from a puppy mill, and, you know, telling them how to do that. And I think those are the biggest things, you know, to do. The legislation to try and make it illegal to sell puppies, that, in stores where you're not going to necessarily be able to trace where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah. And just really making sure if you're going to buy a puppy from a breeder that you go and you visit and you meet the parents. And a lot of people buy out of state, and they have the puppies shipped in and they're
Mm-hmm.
getting pictures of the parents, and that is just not the same because you don't even know if those are actually the parents or if those are some other dogs. So really, really making that commitment that if you are going to buy a puppy from a breeder, you are going to visit and you're going to see the conditions the puppy comes from.
Absolutely, 100%. And to share a quick story with me, like I grew up with rescue dogs all my life, and Shia, my current fur daughter, that the first time that I got her from a breeder, and I was a little bit hesitant because there's a deposit that's into it as well, and then also it's online. She was in another state, just a state over. So she was in Indiana, I was in Tennessee, and it was my first time doing it. So, and the college that I had went to, Animal Behavior College, when I asked at the time, they said I required of, working with a pup and it's best to have one of my own. So I'm like, absolutely, grew up with pups, totally fine, like, got this. And, he was so wonderful, the breeder, and he did do those increments like you were talking about, like every 2 years, you were able to visit his home. He did video recording. He took pictures and sent me of them, of her and like of them as like her siblings, and even wrote the date like at the bottom, like yeah, can you take a picture now? Because I was looking online, like how do I know if like this is legit and somebody didn't take somebody pictures and then send it. So he even took a picture of her currently and wrote a date. I'm like, oh, that's my future baby. But yes, I definitely agree. And before we wrap this up, I wanted to touch bases back at the rescues because I agree. There's so many pups that are in shelters, and the number one leading cause to why they're put to sleep is because of their behavioral situations. And I wanted to touch base on you. When you had shared that. Now, if you get a rescue pup, they may be a little bit, quote unquote, you said trouble, but definitely they may do carry some behavioral, gosh, I don't even like saying issues, but like, behavioral situations that they have, that they have associated with from their past pet parents. So I'd like to see what what could you share with a pet parent that totally wants to go through with rescuing? 100% agree with you of adopting a dog from a shelter. What can you give them for encouragement on working with these type of behavioral situations? Of course, yes, going to a trainer, but like the first initiative process, and then also, of course, following up with a trainer, and then you leading what steps to take with that stance.
I'm so glad you asked that because I actually personally, not with Karma Dogs, but I have taught a class for humans who have rescue dogs or are thinking of adopting rescue dogs on what to do. I also grew up in a household that had rescue dogs. I've lived with rescue dogs all my life, and some of them had some pretty challenging issues. Some of them had basically no issues and were just pre-trained dogs. And so it really just depends. I guess I would say take your time when you look online and you see that cute pup and you're like, that's the one. Their bio isn't necessarily going to be completely accurate or full, not because the shelter is deliberately trying to mislead, but just because they have really limited time for what they can do. So it's a good idea if you can go and visit the dog a couple times before you adopt. That's a good idea. To not just go in, have 1 30-minute meet and greet, and then take them home.
Mm-hmm.
It's also really important to be really realistic about your time scale. So some dogs are going to have no issues. They're going to get home. They're going to be right there with you. They're totally fine. They adapt really easily. Some dogs may have fearfulness issues. Some dogs may have aggression. Whatever things, they may just be poorly socialized. And so to be realistic about your time span and have a plan for how you're going to support this dog in feeling safe. So something that I really recommend for rescue dogs is to have a place in the house for them, like a crate or a little fenced off corner or maybe like a table with a blanket over it, somewhere small that sort of feels like a den that can be their space. And to sort of work with the whole family, including the other dogs, to be like, when our rescue dog goes into this space, we leave them alone, especially if they have any level of fearfulness. I think that having that space can help them blossom out into the family. Because, it can be really overwhelming. We can't explain to them what's going on. They don't know what's happening. And I think having that is a really good start. And also working with a trainer, from the beginning, and everything else too, with rescue dogs, you still need to look into their breed. Any sort of background you can get on them can be really, really helpful, sort of all the other things we talked about. And kind of, even if they're 3 years old, kind of from the beginning, treat them like a puppy. Don't assume that they know anything. Don't get mad at them for not knowing things or making mistakes. Just really, really be consistent. Have a plan so that they have that consistency from day one of this is what it's like living in this house. And then they have that, because for rescue dogs, they've gone through a lot of change. They've lost their whole lives. They lost it. They don't know if they're ever going to see those people again. So change can be really scary for them. And so having that consistency in your home where they sort of have a routine and a pattern day to day and they know what to expect can really support them in settling in and sort of eliminate some behavior issues that, can come from anxiety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's such a, gosh, like first I had two things. Like one, I definitely agree, like with the having the safe space for sure, 100%. I like how you threw in den, because den, I say that myself because I noticed when we would say like crate or den or kennel, some people, from through my experiences, some pet parents will be like, well, I don't want to lock them up, or things like that, and it's because of like what has been programmed into our minds of like what a crate or kennel is. You know what I mean? Like going to a rescue center and seeing those kennels like that, or even prisons, right? Like they even have like those gates like around and fenced in areas. So I really like the fact that you transitioned to that den space, because you're so right. It's about creating a comforting space for that pup to get adjusted to the environment, and absolutely keeping with that consistency whenever going through that puppy role, even if they happen to be 3, 5, 6, 10 years old, right? And you're just adopting them into your home because you're wanting to keep with the yes, the consistency, but also the behavioral cues to really like concrete and strengthen and firm that in there. And I feel the need to say this, like, guys, I don't. Jacqueline's not saying like, what is it? And this popped in my head from like experiences. So, not to baby, right? Not to baby them like.
Oh no. No, but you should, when you get a little puppy, you shouldn't be babying that puppy either. It's really, it really supports them to know, this is their place in the pack. They look to you for direction. They don't need to be stressing out, trying to make choices. You've got it handled. You're making the choices, and sort of helping them learn whatever age they are. I mean, when you watch dogs interact with other dogs, you see that when there's a new situation that comes up, and the younger dogs don't know what to do in the new situation, they look to the older dog and they mimic the behavior they see the older dog displaying. And so, whatever age, whatever kind of a dog, puppy or anything, like when you're starting out and you're treating them like a puppy, it doesn't mean babying them, it doesn't mean spoiling them. It means having really low expectations for their behavior and not getting disappointed in their behavior, and trying to set them up for success as much as possible, and providing strong guidelines for them and consistency where they can grow and understand what their role in the family is.
Jacqueline? Yes, 100%. We are going to leave it on that amazing positive note. And before we wrap this up here, I'd like to ask you, what really inspired you of getting into the dog world, the dog universe, of why you really connected with this type of this animal?
Well, a lot of it was just the way I grew up. So my mom rescued dogs growing up, our house, we called ourselves a forever home. So, we didn't have very many dogs at a time, but we would rescue oftentimes, harder cases, and we would be their forever home, and they would live with us, no matter what medical or behavioral issues they had, we were it for them. They were going to be with us, and we were going to take care of them the very best that we could for the rest of their lives. So growing up with that sort of mentality, and with these challenging dogs, I really just, I had to learn how to train dogs. And my mom, she was not a dog trainer, but she was really skilled with working with dogs. And so she was able to, teach me a lot of dog behavior, how to interpret and respond, how to communicate your wants and needs in a positive way. And then I did 4-H. So I was sort of got a little bit more involved with other people with dogs and sort of started helping out, made some connections. I started pet sitting when I was in junior high. And I just trained their dogs when I was staying there, because for me, growing up with rescues, and sometimes problem cases, when I continuously encourage positive behavior when I'm around dogs. And so they would come home and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you trained my dog." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess." But like, "Thank you." And then just sort of took the step from there to training more officially.
Ah, beautiful, beautiful story. Jacqueline, thank you so much for sharing your expertise of today. I'm sure you have reached so much awareness, consciousness, epiphanies for some people of how to really choose the right dog for your family. You've brought in more insight, more comforting, more peace of mind. The list could go on, really. So thank you so much for tuning in with us. And I'm really excited that you were able to share this piece of how everything's all connected, of how we can really communicate more with our dogs.
Thank you, Skylar. You make the whole process so easy.
Reciprocated. All right, thank you so much, and we will definitely stay tuned for the next podcast, guys. Peace.